Thursday, August 15th, 2024. The Family Feud studio in Atlanta was already alive with laughter before the cameras even rolled. Audience members fanned themselves under the bright stage lights. The familiar game show set gleamed. Bold red buzzers, spinning spotlights. That signature smile logo shining like a promise of joy. Somewhere in the chaos, Steve Harvey was rehearsing a few off-script jokes with the production crew, adjusting his tie, that trademark mix of charm and command radiating from him. But in the middle of all that energy, that predictable television rhythm, one story was about to break the format. One quiet woman sitting in the contestant lineup would turn this simple game show into one of the most heartbreaking and unforgettable moments ever seen on national television. Her name was Patricia Morrison, 68 years old, gray hair neatly pinned, soft-spoken and polite, her eyes shining with a clarity that her doctors hadn't seen in months. To the audience, she looked like any other mother. Sweet, a little nervous, proud to be there. But sitting next to her was her son, Michael Morrison. And Michael knew something the audience didn't. His mother's eyes, those clear, beautiful eyes, might not stay that way for long. Because Patricia had late-stage Alzheimer's disease. And the cruel truth was that this bright, excited woman sitting beside him would soon forget where she was, who Steve Harvey was, and worst of all, who her own son was. That morning had begun hours earlier, long before the lights, before the applause, before Steve Harvey's voice boomed across the studio. In a quiet hotel room in downtown Atlanta, Michael had woken up to the faint sound of humming. It was his mother. Patricia was sitting by the window, already dressed in her favorite lavender blouse, brushing her hair and softly singing a hymn from her childhood church. Morning light streamed through the blinds, turning her silver hair to gold. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said when she saw him stir. Michael froze. It had been 3 weeks since his mother had called him by name. His throat tightened. "Good morning, Mom," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "Is today the day we go see Steve Harvey?" It was such a simple sentence, but to Michael it felt like a small miracle. He blinked back tears and nodded. "Yes, Mom, today's the day." Patricia giggled, that soft, delighted laugh that used to fill their kitchen when she'd burn toast or dance while cooking. For a few fragile moments, she was herself again. The woman who raised him alone after his father died. The woman who never missed a Sunday service, who still mailed birthday cards with cursive handwriting even after she started forgetting people's names. But Michael knew what was coming. Alzheimer's always gave before it took. These lucid moments were like sunsets, brilliant, brief, and followed by darkness. He'd seen it happen over and over for 4 years. The disease started slowly. A misplaced wallet, a burned pot of soup, a forgotten appointment. But it moved fast, too fast. Soon she couldn't remember what day it was or how to get home from the grocery store. Then she began confusing Michael with his late father. She'd call him James when he'd pretend not to cry. And yet, there was one strange, shining exception to the fog. It began 8 months ago, on an ordinary Tuesday. Patricia had been sitting in her care home, staring blankly at the TV. Michael had been flipping through channels just to fill the silence, until Family Feud came on. The second Steve Harvey appeared on screen, something changed. Patricia sat upright, her dull eyes suddenly flickering with awareness. "Oh," she said, "I love this show. He's funny." Michael froze. His mother hadn't spoken a full sentence in 2 weeks. That day they watched the entire episode together, and for 20 glorious minutes, she laughed at every question, clapped for the contestants, and even teased Michael for missing an answer. After that, it became a ritual. Every day at 4 p.m., they watched Family Feud. Every day for those brief minutes, the fog in Patricia's mind lifted. The nurses called it the Steve Harvey effect. Patricia's neurologist, Dr. Sarah Chen, couldn't explain it. She theorized that Steve's voice, his warmth, his mannerisms, maybe even his laugh, were triggering deep emotional memories from Patricia's past. Perhaps the show reminded her of a happier, safer time. Perhaps something in his tone struck a hidden chord in her damaged brain. Whatever the reason, it worked. For a few moments each day, Patricia returned to herself. But the windows were shrinking. 8 months ago, the lucidity lasted 20 minutes. 6 months ago, 15. Last month, barely 10. Michael knew what that meant. Soon even Steve Harvey wouldn't be able to bring his mother back. And that's when he made his decision. The hardest, most hopeful decision of his life. He would bring his mother to Family Feud. Not to win money, not for fame, but for something only a son could understand. He wanted her to live again, even if only for one more day. He wanted her to stand on that stage smiling and radiant, fully herself. He wanted to freeze time, to make those few lucid minutes eternal. The application process was brutal. Family Feud received thousands of entries each month. He wrote heartfelt letters, filmed video messages, even sent clips of Patricia watching the show and laughing with genuine joy. He wrote one final line that broke hearts. For 15 minutes each day, your show gives me my mother back. Please let me give her that gift in person, just once. Weeks passed. No reply. Then one morning, Michael's phone rang. Mr. Morrison, a voice said, this is Marcus Freeman from Family Feud. We've seen your videos. We need to talk. Michael didn't know it yet, but that phone call would change not just his life, but the lives of millions who would one day watch his mother's final, miraculous game. Mr. Morrison, this is Marcus Freeman from Family Feud. We've seen your videos. We need to talk. Those words replayed in Michael's mind like an echo that wouldn't fade. He was sitting at the small wooden kitchen table of the care facility when the call came through. Patricia was beside him, asleep in her wheelchair, her fragile hands folded neatly over a lavender blanket. Michael pressed the phone tighter to his ear, hardly daring to breathe. Marcus Freeman's voice was warm, but professional, the voice of a man who had seen too many stories, yet still believed in the power of one more. Michael, Marcus said gently, we've reviewed everything you sent. The letters, the footage, the doctor's notes. I just need to ask you one difficult question before we move forward. Michael straightened, his heart racing. Anything. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Marcus asked. Your mother will be on stage, in front of a live audience, under bright lights, with millions watching from home. If she loses focus or becomes confused, it'll be caught forever on camera. Are you ready for that? Michael looked at his mother, her head tilted slightly to the side, her breathing soft and steady, her face peaceful but far away. He swallowed hard. Mr. Freeman, he said, voice trembling, my mother is already disappearing. Every day she drifts a little further from me. I can't stop it. I can't fix it. But if there's even a small chance that for a few minutes she can feel alive again, that she can laugh and be herself, then yes. I want to do this. Even if it ends badly, it'll still be something beautiful. There was silence on the other end. Then Marcus's tone softened even more. Okay, Michael, then we'll make it happen. But I think you should know. Steve read your letter. His own mother passed from dementia 6 years ago. When I showed him your video, he cried in his dressing room for 20 minutes. He said, if this woman finds joy in my voice, we're going to give her the best day of her life. Michael felt tears sting his eyes. He looked at his mother again, fragile, fading, and whispered, thank you. 3 weeks later, he and Patricia were on a plane bound for Atlanta. Patricia sat by the window, gazing at the clouds with the kind of childlike wonder she used to have when she took him to amusement parks. Every few minutes, she'd turn to him and ask, where are we going again? And each time, Michael would smile and say, to see Steve Harvey, Mom. And every time she'd whisper, oh, how wonderful, as if hearing it for the first time. When they landed, the Family Feud team greeted them with kindness that didn't feel rehearsed. They had arranged for a quiet van, soft lighting, and a hotel suite with no ticking clocks or loud televisions. Small touches that meant everything to someone living in confusion. Dr. Sarah Chen, Patricia's neurologist, flew down herself to monitor her condition. She's unusually alert this week, Dr. Chen said after examining her. More focused than I've seen in months. I can't explain it, but it's like something in her knows she has a purpose. The morning of the taping arrived. The studio smelled of coffee, stage paint, and excitement. Crew members rushed around setting up lights, microphones, and game boards. The audience filtered in, their chatter filling the air like static. But behind the stage curtain, in a quiet waiting area, time seemed to slow. Patricia sat in a dressing chair, looking at herself in the mirror. Her makeup artist had just finished powdering her cheeks. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Morrison," the woman said kindly. Patricia smiled faintly. "I haven't been on television before." Michael knelt beside her, adjusting the small name tag on her blouse. "You ready, Mom?" She turned to him, her eyes bright, clear, and utterly present. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's go win this thing." Moments later, the stage lights flared to life. The familiar theme music blasted through the speakers, and the audience erupted in cheers. "And now," the announcer boomed, "here's the star of Family Feud, Steve Harvey." Steve stepped out from the side wing, crisp suit, wide grin, a veteran of stage and spotlight. But as his gaze swept across the contestants, something in his expression softened. He saw her, Patricia Morrison, standing proudly beside her son, her hands trembling ever so slightly, her eyes shining with fragile clarity. He walked straight to her, bypassing the usual theatrics, and took both her hands. "Mrs. Morrison," Steve said softly, his deep voice warm and genuine, "it's an honor to have you here today." Patricia's smile reached her eyes. "Mr. Harvey," she said with a small laugh, "you make me laugh every day. You don't even know what you've done for me." For a moment, Steve just looked at her, really looked, and nodded slowly. "You know, ma'am," he said, "I think I do." From the control booth, Marcus Freeman signaled the cameras. On a small monitor in the corner, a timer appeared. It started counting down from 15. Only the crew and Michael could see it. A quiet reminder that every second mattered. As the first round began, something extraordinary happened. Patricia buzzed in first. "Name something people say right before a big event," Steve read aloud. Patricia pressed her buzzer and shouted, "Lord, help me!" The audience burst out laughing. Steve threw his hands up, grinning. "You know what? I say that every day of my life," he said, pacing the stage as the board lit up. "Number 1, answer, pray." Patricia laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Her laughter was clear, natural, whole. Michael could barely breathe. It was her, his mother, fully herself again. Minute after minute, she played with wit and warmth, teasing Steve, high-fiving the other contestants. The audience adored her. Steve began playing along, letting her shine, every exchange a dance between humor and humanity. But then Michael glanced at the clock. The red numbers glowed like a warning. 9:43. The window was closing. Still, Patricia was radiant, laughing at Steve's jokes, whispering answers to Michael, living as though the disease didn't exist. And for those few minutes, the world outside the stage, the fear, the illness, the grief, disappeared completely. But deep down, Michael knew what Dr. Chen had said. When that clock hit 0, his mother would start to fade again. The thought haunted him like a shadow at the edge of the spotlight. For now, though, he pushed it away. For now, his mother was alive, and she was playing Family Feud. For now, his mother was alive, and she was playing Family Feud. The laughter in the studio was electric, that rare kind of joy that spreads from the stage to the audience and back again. Patricia Morrison was unstoppable. Every answer she gave, every witty comment she tossed at Steve, drew waves of applause. Even the camera operators were smiling behind their lenses. Michael could see it in everyone's faces. This wasn't a game show anymore. It was something sacred, something human. Steve Harvey was more than a host now. He'd become her guide, her guardian, steering her through each round with warmth and grace. When Patricia fumbled, Steve gently redirected her. When she joked, he let the moment breathe. For 12 glorious minutes, she was herself again. Sharp, funny, radiant. Michael sat behind the podium, his heart full and breaking at the same time. He couldn't stop glancing at the timer. 5:48. He felt his pulse quicken. Dr. Chen's voice echoed in his head. When her clarity begins to fade, it will happen fast. As the next question lit up the screen, Name something people never forget. Patricia pressed the buzzer and answered softly. Their children. Her voice trembled on the word. The audience cheered. Steve smiled, but his eyes glistened. He turned slightly toward the camera, cleared his throat, and said, You know, that's the best answer we've heard all day. Michael's throat tightened. That wasn't just a line. It was Steve's way of holding the moment still, of preserving something that was already slipping away. 3:15. They were now entering the final round. Fast money. The lights dimmed slightly, and the set glowed in deep reds and golds. The audience quieted, sensing the gravity of the moment. Steve stepped closer to Patricia, his voice gentle. Mrs. Morrison, you ready for fast money? Patricia looked up at him and nodded with confidence. Let's win this thing, Mr. Harvey. Her hand was steady on the podium. Michael could see the faint tremor in her fingers, but her eyes were bright. All right, Steve said, smiling. 20 seconds on the clock. The timer started. Name a place people go to feel peaceful. Church, Patricia replied instantly. Name something you never forget. Your children, she repeated, a faint smile on her lips. Name something that gets better with time. Love, she whispered. Name a reason you might forget something. Getting old, Patricia said softly, and the crowd's laughter was replaced by a hush. Steve's face changed, that perfect mixture of humor and heartbreak that only he could carry. Name something you hold on to tight. Patricia looked at Michael. Family, she said. You hold on to family. The buzzer sounded. Time. The studio erupted into applause. Steve dropped his cue cards and pressed a hand to his face, wiping away tears. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is what you call a perfect game, he said, voice cracking slightly. Michael stood frozen, fighting back tears. His mother turned to him, her face lit with triumph. Did we win? She asked, like a child proud of her first drawing. Yes, Mom, Michael whispered. We did. 1:57. As Steve went to reveal the scores, something began to change. Patricia hesitated mid-step, glancing around like she was searching for something. The lights seemed too bright now. The sound of clapping too loud. She blinked rapidly, her eyes darting from Steve to Michael to the audience. Steve noticed it immediately. He lowered his microphone and walked toward her slowly, his expression shifting from host to human. You're all right, Mrs. Morrison, he said quietly. You did good. Patricia tried to smile, but it was uncertain. Did we win? Yes, ma'am, Steve replied softly. You sure did. Michael's chest tightened. He could see the confusion creeping back, like fog rolling in from a distance. Her clarity was fading, the cruel, predictable tide returning. 0:58. Patricia took a small step backward, her voice trembling. Where are we? Why are there so many lights? The audience fell silent. Even the crew stopped moving. The air felt heavy, suspended. Michael rose from his podium and reached for her hand. Mom, it's okay, he said. You're safe. We're just playing the game, remember? She turned to look at him. For a moment, her eyes softened, as if recognition flickered somewhere inside. But then she frowned. I'm sorry, she said faintly. Who are you? The sound hit Michael like a physical blow. He couldn't breathe. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He had known this moment was coming, had dreaded it, prepared for it, and yet hearing those words tore something deep inside him. Steve stepped closer, gently placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. The cameras were still rolling, but no one dared speak. The clock hit 0:00. Then softly, Patricia smiled. You have kind eyes, she said, touching Michael's face with trembling fingers. You remind me of someone. I had a son once. He was a good boy. My sweet boy. Michael swallowed hard. Tears streamed down his face. It's me, Mom, he whispered. It's Michael. She tilted her head, her voice small and uncertain. Michael, she repeated as if testing the word. My Michael. Yes, he said, his voice breaking. You're Michael. We won, Mom. For one brief second, something inside her clicked. Her eyes cleared and she smiled, radiant and pure. Good, she said softly. I wanted to win for you. Michael nodded, his lips trembling. You did, Mom. You did. Then, as gently as a candle going out, the light in her eyes faded. Her gaze drifted, empty again. She blinked, lost. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "Who are you?" And just like that, she was gone again. Steve Harvey stood silently, his microphone lowered. For a long moment, no one in the studio moved. You could hear the faint hum of the lights, the sound of someone in the audience quietly crying. Then Steve looked up at the cameras, his voice low and raw. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "what you just witnessed is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking things I've ever seen." He put an arm around Michael, still holding Patricia's hand in his. "This is love," he said softly. "This is what it looks like when someone fights to hold on, even when the world forgets." The audience rose to their feet, not clapping, but standing in silence, a rare, reverent hush on a stage built for laughter. And somewhere, just beyond the bright studio lights, time itself seemed to stop. And somewhere, just beyond the bright studio lights, time itself seemed to stop. Steve Harvey stood motionless, one hand on Patricia's shoulder, the other still gripping his microphone. The audience was silent, waiting for him to speak, but he didn't. There were no jokes left to tell, no clever transitions to hide behind. In that moment, the game show host became something else entirely, a witness to the quiet cruelty and the quiet beauty of love. Patricia looked around the stage, confused but calm. The cameras, still rolling, captured every second. Her uncertain smile, Michael's trembling hands, Steve's tear-filled eyes. Then slowly, Steve turned toward the crowd. His deep voice, always commanding, but now fragile, echoed through the studio. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what you just witnessed was not a game. It was love." The words landed like thunder in the stillness. Steve continued, his voice cracking. "This is Mrs. Patricia Morrison. She has late-stage Alzheimer's disease. For the last 15 minutes, she was completely herself, laughing, joking, remembering. And now," he looked at Michael, who stood beside his mother, trying to steady her trembling hand. "Now she's fading again. That's what this disease does. It takes people away in pieces." Steve took a deep breath, his eyes glistening. "My own mother had dementia," he said quietly. "I watched her forget herself. It's the cruelest thing I've ever seen, because it doesn't take them all at once. It takes them a little at a time, memory by memory, until the person you love looks at you and doesn't know your name. But what you just saw, that was grace. That was God letting a son have his mother back for 15 minutes. By then, the audience was in tears. Grown men in the front row wiped their faces. A woman in the back clutched her chest. Even the camera crew, professionals who'd seen everything, were crying quietly behind their lenses. Dr. Chen appeared from backstage, moving toward Patricia with calm precision. She spoke gently, taking Patricia's hand. "Mrs. Morrison, let's take a little break, okay?" Patricia smiled faintly and nodded, unaware of the hundreds of eyes following her every move. As she walked off stage with the doctor, she glanced back once at Steve and Michael. "Did we win?" she asked softly. Steve's lips quivered into a smile. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "You won." When the stage doors closed behind her, Michael felt the strength leave his body. He lowered his head into his hands. Steve walked over, knelt beside him, and without a word hugged him. No cameras, no applause, just two men, strangers bound by shared loss. "Thank you," Steve whispered, "for letting us see her light." Michael shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "No, Mr. Harvey," he said. "Thank you. You gave her something I couldn't. You gave her herself, even if it was just for 15 minutes. That night, the footage was reviewed in the editing room. No one spoke as they watched it back. Patricia's laughter, her clarity, her confusion, her final question. When the video ended, the producer quietly said, "We're not cutting a single frame." 3 weeks later, the episode aired exactly as it had unfolded. The network added one note at the beginning. "This episode is dedicated to families affected by Alzheimer's disease." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions watched, cried, and shared the clip online. Within days, it became the most viewed Family Feud episode in the show's history. Viewers wrote messages from around the world, stories of their own parents, grandparents, and loved ones battling memory loss. The Alzheimer's Association reported a record surge in donations that month. Researchers began contacting Dr. Chen, curious about the Steve Harvey effect, wondering if joy, laughter, or familiarity could awaken dormant parts of the brain. But for Michael, it wasn't about statistics or recognition. For him, it was about 15 minutes. He re-watched the episode hundreds of times, memorizing every breath, every smile, every spark in his mother's eyes. It became his anchor, a proof that for one perfect day, she had come back. 6 months later, on a cold February morning, Michael received a call from the care home. His mother had passed peacefully in her sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, clutching the phone, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. When the funeral came, it was small. Family, a few friends, Dr. Chen, and Marcus Freeman from Family Feud. Halfway through the service, the doors opened, and a familiar figure walked in. Steve Harvey himself, dressed in black, hat in hand. He didn't speak during the ceremony. He simply sat in the back pew, his head bowed. Afterward, he approached Michael quietly. "She was something special," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've done thousands of shows, met thousands of people, but I've never seen anything like what I saw that day. The way she fought to stay present, the way you looked at her, that was the purest thing I've ever witnessed." Michael nodded, unable to speak. Steve put a hand on his shoulder. "You gave her the courage to hold on. You reminded me why I do what I do. It ain't about the money or the fame. It's about moments that matter." 2 years later, Family Feud partnered with the Alzheimer's Association to create an annual special called Moments of Clarity. Each year, families dealing with dementia were invited to play, not for prizes, but for memories. Michael appeared at the start of every episode, sharing his mother's story, reminding viewers that love can reach even where memory cannot. In the memory care home where Patricia spent her last years, they renamed the small TV room Patricia's Room. Every day at 4 p.m., they played Family Feud, and sometimes for a few precious moments, the residents would smile, laugh, or call out an answer, their eyes clear again, just like Patricia's had been. Steve Harvey often mentioned Patricia Morrison in interviews. "That episode changed me," he said once, voice quiet, eyes lowered. "It reminded me that the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or fame. It's time. Even 15 minutes can change a life." Michael still keeps that Emmy Award Steve later gave him. It sits on his desk beside a framed photo of his mother at the podium, her hand over the buzzer, her smile frozen in eternal light. In that single captured moment, she looks alive, whole, and beautifully free. Because for 15 minutes, Patricia Morrison beat Alzheimer's. And those 15 minutes, the laughter, the tears, the miracle, will never be forgotten.